Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Danielle Lord. I'm the founder and principal of Archetype Learning Solutions. And on this channel, we talk about all things employee engagement. And I've got something in my eye. Sorry about that. So our strategy is really simple. Employee engagement is about quality daily interactions that you have with your team members. So we like to say engage everyone every day. Takes zero effort, costs you nothing but a little bit of time and your heart energy. And I think that the topic I want to talk about today came from an article that was in my that I found this morning while kind of perusing through the web, and it really is very at the center of that heart space that I've talked about a lot on this channel. So in addition to discussing some of the strategies that we have and how to apply them, how they show up in our daily life at work, there's also, I like to go deeper into the human psychology or the human dynamic component as well. So that's a big part of the conversation that we usually have here. So if you're just joining the channel, there's a little bit about what we do. All right, so the article that I found today really hit home for me, and it was called Loneliness is Reshaping Your Workplace. And I couldn't agree more. And we have to break out of this cycle and this pattern. So the authors were Kristen Gleitzman and Louis Velasquez. Hopefully I'm pronouncing both of your names correctly. Loneliness is Reshaping Your Workplace. So a couple of quotes that stood out for me as I looked at this, and it says in the article, I'm quoting, "People are quieter. Collaboration feels more transactional, and new employees aren't taking initiative." And we can talk about the new employee perspective from the integration work that I do. I know everybody calls it onboarding. I call it integration. Different conversation, but certainly employees who are not integrated into the culture definitely have experienced employee engagement issues. And I'll talk about that hopefully at another time. These shifts, they write, are easy to dismiss as cultural friction or post-pandemic fatigue, but they point to something different. And yeah, I have written quite a bit about this. The difference it points to, I think, is that we are experiencing the reality of scientific management. And scientific management should have been proven to be ineffective. Well, it was proven to be ineffective 100 years ago, but for whatever reason, the big consulting firms picked up on this, adopted this as the best approach for productivity and profitability. And so this has been promoted for many, many years through the big consulting firms who use scientific management, the basis of that being task and productivity as the framework for how we function in organizations. And yes, it erodes our relationships, it erodes our human connections with one another. It therefore impacts trust, our ability to communicate, which ironically has a direct impact on productivity overall, because we just don't work as well together when we do when we're connected. So yes, it is pointing to something much deeper than that. But I think the deeper piece, in addition to this fact that we're still functioning in this place of scientific management, the deeper is that it only takes 30 days to rewire our brain. And I think over the past 4 or 5 years, as we had the whole work from home situation, now the hybrid work, we have rewired our brains to be disconnected. And we connect through Zoom, which is not the same. We are physical beings, and we need that physical connection with one another, be it through some kind of touch, handshake, hug, even within that 6-foot radius where we have what they talk about our biorhythm or our biosphere is impacted by that. So yeah, we have isolated ourselves to the point where we're not getting that physical connection that we need as humans. I think the other piece to that, and I've talked about this, is the reliance on the phone for our dopamine hits and our quick dopamine hits versus the long-term sustained dopamine that we get when we have that physical connection and that physical interaction. And I noticed this when I was still in the workplace. was part of a team. There were 3 of us, and we were pretty well connected as a team. We had a really great relationship. I remember sitting in our manager's office, and at several points in time, the 3 of us would be laughing so hard we'd be crying together. And that didn't happen when we were in our Zoom meetings, sitting from home, isolated from one another. So I think it's different than cultural friction. I think it's different than post-pandemic fatigue. I think it goes much, much deeper than that, is that we've just lost somehow our ability to be connected and remember what that means. It's like we're in this period of collective forgetfulness, right? That we've forgotten what it means to be connected with one another. I mean, we spend a lot of time at work. I know I'm stating the obvious, but I think it's a good reminder to say the bulk of our day is spent at work. And when we don't have that interaction, that's 8 or 9 hours where we're in sometimes complete isolation. All right, so the other thing that they write here, again, I'm quoting and reading directly from their article, Loneliness is Reshaping Your Workplace. Loneliness has been linked to increased burnout, which I have put a label on things, and actually my 2 fellow research partners, Doctors Kadoma and Granzotti, and I have all coined the term cumulative workplace distress. So as an umbrella term, burnout, PTSD, moral injury, compassion fatigue, all of those things fall under that umbrella term that we call cumulative workplace distress. So yes, burnout is very, very prevalent. So loneliness has been linked to increased burnout, declining productivity, and rising attrition. Yes, absolutely true. And all of those things costing US companies up to $154 billion a year. I would also add to that, I think that they missed employee engagement. So, chicken or the egg? Are you burnt out because you don't have the engagement? Do you have lack of engagement because you're burnt out? Probably a little bit of both. And they are kind of feeding into that negativity of one another. Beyond the measurable financial impact, leaders sense something has shifted, but they struggle to name it. Well, okay, we can have a whole conversation about the difference between leaders and managers, but for now, we'll just say yes, leaders. For those listening, I used air quotes there. And I think what they're struggling to name is this whole idea of lack of engagement, because we see our engagement scores at the lowest levels they've ever been. We see our manager engagement scores at the lowest they've ever been. And I think they are, sadly, sometimes unwittingly or unknowingly, a part of that inability to make connections as well, because they've not created the space for psychological safety, for people to come in and be in that relationship among themselves. All right, struggling to name it. It's a lack of engagement. It's cumulative workplace distress. It's so many things. After all, goals are still being met. People are still showing up to meetings, and Slack channels are in use. Yet the energy feels lower, collaboration more transactional, and initiative harder to sustain. And yes, all of those things are a result of cumulative workplace distress. I think the other thing too is, yeah, they're still having their meetings, they're still meeting their goals, but at what cost? And I talked in my September strategy webinar, I focus on meetings and how we should be using meetings to improve our engagement, not just stay on task and be meeting our productivity deadlines. So meetings can be really powerful, and using meetings in a different way to help the team connect, to help humans connect with one another, certainly can go a long, long way. So they have put forward some suggestions, and I just want to comment on these. Again, this is from Loneliness is Reshaping Your Workplace, and build team cohesion through shared identity. And again, I think this really comes down to the fact that we get into our meeting space and we all kind of sit there. I've been in it, where you show up and everyone's sitting around the table. We're all waiting for the meeting to start. And what are we doing? We're back on our phones. We're checking email. We're checking Facebook. We're playing a game, whatever, rather than connecting with one another. It's really awkward, but what an opportunity right there, missed opportunity. So they say to create some team narratives, moments of grit, missteps or breakthrough. So again, back to storytelling. I'm using stories to create excitement, using stories to connect with one another by understanding different perspectives. And then simple rituals like celebrating small wins. I talk about that all the time. The second thing they suggest is design collaboration to build trust. I think they're backwards a bit on this. I would say you can't have effective collaboration until you have trust. And the best way to have trust is to get connections and get people breaking out of the, I've got this deadline to do, and I'm going to stay focused on this, to let's go grab some coffee and just talk with one another. We don't have to talk about anything work related. Let's just spend 15 minutes getting to know one another, sharing hobbies, sharing what you did over the weekend, sharing some small wins, but break out of this idea that you have to just talk about work all the time. And so when we create that space, we see increased trust, and then we get to more collaboration. They suggest to pair new hires with onboarding buddies. Absolutely. I love that they talk about this, because I talk about this all the time. It's part of my integration package, is to make sure that your new team members understand the context of the work and also to create those personal connections from day one. So I have lots of tools that I use to help with that. And again, to help create some common connection points. And I have in my integration, and actually even in the engaging your employees toolkit, I use about me posters. So they're just poster templates to say, hey, I'm Danielle. And there's like 8 or 9 of these different poster templates. Employees can pick the one that they find most meaningful. So mine might be, my name's Danielle, and if we were going to go to lunch together, we'd go out for Thai food, and there's a little bit more in depth than that. But it's a fun way to help people find those connections, because you could spend 20 years working with somebody and not ever know that you had a common love of Thai food with someone. Model humanity to build resilient teams is their number 3 suggestion. And in this, they're referencing psychological safety. And yes, we talk about psychological safety a lot with kind of throwing it out there as like a cavalier term. What does it actually mean to have a space where people can feel psychological safety? It means that you can have an honest conversation. It means that you can bring up an idea and actually have a brainstorming event without feeling belittled or silly because you brought up some wild idea. It means that you can say to your manager, hey, what you did yesterday was really fucked up, and I felt unsupported, and you weren't exhibiting your best behavior in that particular situation. That's psychological safety. When we get really down to it, we're very cavalier about this term. So their suggestion is to start team meetings with a quick red, yellow, green check-in. About how they're doing to create a shared emotional backdrop for the work ahead. I like the idea, but red, yellow, green check-in, traffic light check-ins are always great, but we tend to see the red oftentimes as a real negative and something that is, there tends to be a punitive response with the stoplight colors, in my experience, rather than people understanding that, oh, red actually is a barrier that we need to help overcome and resolve. It's not intended to be you're not doing your work, you're not doing your job. And I've talked a lot about the relationship matrix when you have an employee that can either be in the, now I'm going to forget the matrix, in the I'm drawing a blank. The relationship is really where you want to go at this. You want to be at the end of the matrix on the far right-hand side with the relationship. And then you have, oh my gosh, why am I drawing such a blank on this? In the middle is kind of the acquaintance, And at the very end or the beginning is this kind of standoffish, I don't want to get to know you place at all, which is typically what can happen when we have employees who are first coming into the workplace. But if we never break through that newcomer or acquaintance phase and get to the relationship phase, holding up a red, yellow, green card is not always, I think, the best approach to that. So we're again right back to that idea of throwing out this idea that psychological safety is somehow a word that we can just throw around. I hope that made sense. Forgetting the forgetting that matrix kind of was a showstopper there for me for a minute. So my suggestion to this, love the idea, but sometimes people get hung up on the red. And again, if we haven't gotten to that relationship phase, asking people to be that vulnerable is not likely to happen. Okay, there's my recap of that. So I have a good friend who uses a bud, a bloom, and a thorn as kind of the alternative to the red, yellow, green, and the bud being something that's emerging, the bloom being something that's about to end, and the thorn being something that's in your side, the kind of the thorn in the side or something that's bugging you. I think it's a little safer than to call out the red, yellow, green again, because people get hung up on the red, and we want to see that as a problem we have to solve or an issue that you're having, and we sometimes step in with that real punitive approach. Okay, I went on way longer than I needed to there. And then number 4, operationalize belongings through systems and rituals. Yeah, we oftentimes don't have the organizational stamina because everything's been developed in a silo. And we tend to develop our organizations in freestanding silos rather than understanding the fact that sometimes we have to cut across and connect with one another so that we have a better understanding of what those operational events mean. So there's a long process that we can go through to get to that. But again, if we don't have the operational understanding of what another team is working on, then everything that they're doing is stupid, or we don't understand it, and then nobody checks into it, and that's how we end up working in silos. So if you've got those silos, you're not going to have those belongings through the systemic approach that we could have. Rituals can be really fun, and I've used rituals in change management practices before. But again, you've got to have the right culture that recognizing that rituals do have a lot of meaning. And then the number 5 thing that they suggest is set the tone by acknowledging your own need for connection. And I think that this is very, very true. And in fact, they start the paragraph with loneliness at the top is real, and it can be contagious. And I think there's so much truth that's in that statement. And again, we're seeing management engagement scores at their lowest ever. And I think managers are definitely feeling the sense of loneliness too. This is why we talk about everybody has the capacity to lead, and leadership is a set of behaviors, not a title or a role. So when was the last time any of us walked in and asked our boss, how are you doing? Well, maybe it's time we start. And so we start to show them a little bit of love as well. So those were their 5 suggestions, and I want to give credit to both of these individuals, are Dr. Kirsten Gleitzman and Dr. Louis Velasquez. So I want to make sure that they get their credit for having PhDs in this important work. So that's my take on the article. I think it was a great article. Very well timed. We've got to find connections with one another in the workplace. And I had a client, a good German engineer, who said, we don't need all this stuff in the workplace in Germany. We just come in and we do our work and we go home, and we have our connections at home and through our quality of life in Germany. And that might be fine in Germany, and that might be great for the German ethos. But the individual who is here working and experiencing a really bad situation with her manager, it was definitely a turning point for her. And she sees now the value in having those human connections in the workplace, because we do spend a lot of our time there. All right, little bit long-winded, but I thought this was such a great article, and I love the suggestions that they made. We need more connection, and it's tough being lonely and in a lonely place, especially when you're new. So if you've got those new team members that are coming in, make sure that you reach out, connect with them, connect with one another. If not for them, do it for yourself, because we've got to put our own oxygen mask on sometimes. And don't forget to ask your manager how they're doing. All right, that's it for this conversation today. I'm Danielle Lord. I'm the founder and principal of Archetype Learning Solutions. And on this channel, we talk about all things employee engagement. And if this content resonated with you, I hope you'll like, share, click, save, and please comment, because I'd love to continue the conversation through the comments. All right, thanks so much. Until next time.